Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and this week was supposed to be coffee themed week because it is the spring and summer coffee lovers blog hop. I had so many ideas for cards. I still have a really huge shop my stash coffee themed product haul / video coming that is very long. It's like a good half an hour. It took quite some time to edit that one. So that's still coming. I have all these ideas for cards and just as usual running out of time, plus Father's Day is coming. I wanted to get more cards made for that. So I thought I would combine the two themes and make a couple of Father's Day cards with a coffee theme. So I started off with a sheet of Gina craft cardstock that I cut in half, and then I scored both pieces. So now I have two top folding A2 size cards. And I just used a couple little pieces of washi tape to tape the base of the card to my work surface here, just so that the card doesn't shift around. And then I'm using one of the stencils from the Honeybee Coffee Lovers background stencil pack. And I taped that into place with the washi tape. And then I pulled out 3 different shades of Distress ink, one being, of course, ground espresso. Best name for a dark brown ink ever. And then I'm also using Vintage Photo and Walnut Stain. And I'm just sponging these over the stencil. Really simple, nothing fancy. Just using a little swirling motion and, you know, letting the inks do their thing, using a little bit of lighter pressure, a little bit of heavier pressure. I just wanted not a flat background. I wanted the different shades of brown and, you know, some more intense, a little bit lighter, just to give it that little bit of variation, because on the whole, both these cards are fairly simple. So it was kind of just fun. And plus I love the look of anything on craft cardstock. I've said that with so many things. I like, you know, metallic watercolors on craft, colored pencils on craft, stamping on craft, everything. Everything looks great on craft cardstock because it's just, I don't know. I have a thing for craft cardstock. Always have. So I did the first one and then I did the second one. Really, really simple. And then once I have both of my backgrounds done, I can just simply wipe the stencil off just with a baby wipe because it's just distressing. So it's quick and easy to clean up. For my main images, I am using the, I guess you'd call this the aerial view of the coffee cup from the Honeybee Coffee Break stamp set. And I have a piece of Distress watercolor paper with the smooth side facing up. And I'm just using my stamp platform. Double stamping these, although I don't think I really need it. They stamped perfectly the first time. I've used these stamps so many times. They're nice and conditioned. They take ink really, really well. But yeah, stamping them with VersaFine. I did not heat emboss these. Usually that's what I do, but I decided to just stamp them with the VersaFine. And then I pulled out my glass mat here. Lots of people ask me if I still like it. Did I quit using it? Is there something wrong with it? No, I love my Tonic glass mat, this Tim Holtz one. It is amazing. I moved my desk and the window now, like it'd be right in front of me. So basically towards the top of the video, I have a great big window right here. And so often now the glare is so bad that my camera just goes haywire. So I set it off to the side until I could figure out how this was going to work. So with this video, by the time I got to this point, it was kind of later in the day. There's a few clouds out, so it wasn't crazy bright. Even with the blinds, it's difficult. But regardless, I was able to make it work for today. My light is still a little wonky because I was all over the place and I had my kids running around and the lights were on and yeah, everything was just crazy. But I wanted to use my glass mat because I do love it, especially for things like this, like just smushing my little ink pads onto it and then just being able to, you know, pick up my color with my water brush and then I can just wipe it right off afterwards. I'm good to go. You don't need the glass mat to do this. You can use a piece of plastic. I've literally used stamp packaging in some of my videos to smush my Distress inks onto. As long as that's non-porous, it works. But the glass mat is wonderful. I have no regrets. I just need to do some more fiddling to be able to film with it more often. So I am just doing very simple coloring with these Distress inks. And I had used weathered wood for the spoon, and then I used ground espresso, of course, for the actual coffee. And then while I was doing that, I was like, I don't drink black coffee. I don't know how anyone can. I love coffee, but I don't like black coffee. Ugh. So I actually added a little bit. I just smushed a little bit of Hero Arts Unicorn White Pigment ink, and I'm just painting that onto the little heart there and the little bubbles, kind of making it think like, the froth or a little bit of cream's been added to it, because it mixes with that ground espresso distress ink, because it kind of reactivates it, so it doesn't end up being white. It ends up being kind of a lighter brown. So just something to kind of break it up and make it more like coffee I would actually drink. So, but again, if you're into just drinking plain old coffee, that's fine. I just think it's weird, but whatever. So after I finished that part, I used peacock feathers, one of my ultimate favorite colors, to color the coffee mug and the little saucer, because I just love this color, and I really love this sort of a color, like an aqua teal / color. With brown. I think it makes it just pop. So I did 2 layers of color in this because I really wanted to intensify this peacock feather color. So I ended up smushing it a good couple times onto my glass mat, and then just picking that up with my little water brush here and painting that onto the background. And then speaking of that color, Simon's newest cardstock color, which is aptly named Peacock, that they released when they released their June card kit, is the perfect color. I have a lot of cardstock. People that have seen it in my live streams and whatnot, that have seen all the cardstock I have a lot. I do not have this shade of like teal. It is the perfect color. So I die cut the coffee mugs with the coordinating die. And then I have this remaining piece of this cardstock. I need to order several packs of it left. And I used that, and used the new Honeybee Best Parents wafer die set. And I cut out the father's word with that peacock cardstock. And I cut that out a couple times. And then I originally, my go-to is to like stamp and heat emboss the sentiments on black. But by the time I got to this point, it had been hours later or a day later, whenever. So these distress inks that were sponged over the stencil were completely dry, because distress inks do take a while to dry. So I rarely will do any sort of heat embossing when I've used any sort of distress inks, just because it's kind of a pain in the butt, because the embossing powder wants to cling, here and there to the distress inks. But these had sat long enough that the distress inks were completely dry. I made sure by using my anti-static powder tool and pouring the embossed powder just over it, just to make sure they weren't going to cling to anything, and they didn't. So that way I was able to line up the Happy and Day from the Best Parents stamp set. And I used just the same unicorn white pigment ink, because it was sitting out, to stamp the words, and then coated that with Simon's Detail White embossing powder. And then that way I could just heat emboss these sentiments directly onto my card fronts here. So I did that with both cards. And then after that, I just went through my stash, and I had this kind of like very light brown cardstock that I die cut the outline of the father's word to. And that's why I stamped the sentiments first, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do white for the outline of the die cut, because I was like, oh, that might stand out a little bit too much. So that's why I chose to do the lighter brown. And then to adhere those together, I'm just using my multi-medium matte adhesive and putting just really thin lines of that on the back of this die cut, and then adhering that directly to the outline. And then for the little apostrophe in the father's word there, I actually just picked that up with my little jewel picker. I just put the adhesive directly onto the outline and then press that into place with the jewel picker, and then ended up readjusting it with my little die pick just to get it straightened out a bit. So I did that with both pieces. And then I'm going to cover both of the sentiments as well as those little coffee cups with Simon's foam tape, which is thinner than the Scotch foam tape. I've shown this in many videos. It's like about half as thin as the Scotch foam tape I like to use. So it just depends on my mood on how much dimension I want to add to things. So with these, I wanted to keep it fairly simple, a little bit of dimension, not too much. So I coated the backs of all of the coffee mugs and the sentiments with that foam tape, and then peeled off the backing. And then I'm going to adhere these into place on both of my cards. And then once I've got those adhered into place, I can go and stamp on the insides, because of course you have to finish the insides of your cards. So I've got my outsides all adhered and ready to go. And then for the inside of the card, I'm using more stamps from the Best Parents stamp set. So I'm going to line these card bases up in my stamp platform again so I can stamp both of them just back to back, making it easier. So I lined up the dad word, and this is where the lights are really starting to go a little bit wonky, so I apologize for that. I'm still, after moving everything around and getting frazzled as I usually am, I don't pay attention more often than not to, you know, making sure my studio lights are arranged properly and actually on. I forgot to even turn them on when I was filming this. So I stamped the dad word with that same Peacock Feathers Distress ink, and then I stamped the I love you with the espresso ink, and I stamped it all twice just to get it, you know, more smooth and more even, because distress inks aren't meant for stamping. They're better for inking and blending and watercoloring and all that kind of stuff. But I usually find if I use a stamp positioner and stamp it more than once, I can get a decent coverage, and on craft, everything looks better. So after I had done that, to finish the outside of my cards, I'm using some Nouveau drops, and I used Gloss White and Dark Walnut and Caribbean Ocean, and purposely applying the white and the Caribbean Ocean, I'm avoiding the areas where I sponged on the coffee beans and trying to apply those two colors just to the craft cardstock, because Nouveau drops will absorb distress ink and most dye inks, but especially distress inks, just because they're so reactive. They will absorb that color as they dry, and I wasn't too worried about with these. Like a couple of the white ones did absorb a bit of the color in the end, but I was okay with that because of just this color combo and everything with these cards and the coffee theme. But just a warning, if you apply any of the lighter colored Nouveau drops over anything with distress inks, there's a very good chance they will absorb that color and change. So just be aware of that. So after I had finished applying all those and tapping my card bases, just to kind of smooth them out a bit, I decided to use some crystal glaze to go just around the actual coffee cup itself. And then I'm also going to coat the die cut word fathers with that, just to give it, you know, just intensify it and give it that gloss. So with something like this die cut word that's very, you know, fine in areas, I just coat as much of it as I can. I don't really squeeze the bottle because it comes out so easily. And then any areas that I miss or any little messes I make, I just use a pin to pick it up, and I just wipe that off with my fingers, or I'll wipe it onto a baby wipe, whatever. And I can also move around the crystal glaze a bit to fill in any areas I might have missed when I went around it the first time. Sorry, my messy bun kind of gets in the way. So I did that to both of these cards, and then that finished them both off. So as always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post with a link to all of the supplies used. So you can check that out below if you are interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.